the true secret to capturing attention lies not just in your words, but in how you sound. What if the right voice, tone, and branding could transform your business and enhance customer experience? Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest Jodi Krangle. Topic: Beyond the Noise, the hidden power of sound in marketing and business. Episode 177 starts here. Me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my motto, and empathy is critical in marketing and business. First, let me mention what's been happening in the world of women in tech. Congratulations to Vanu Mari, founder of Coffee Lab Nairobi, for being featured in this month's Women Who Built Africa Spotlight. Your mission to reconnect local consumers with exceptional quality of Kenyan coffee is inspiring. We are excited to see how you continue to elevate local coffee experiences and empower communities through your work. A huge congratulations also to our former PhD guest Roya Kandalan for being featured on a Times Square billboard as one of the top mentors on TopMate.io. Your dedication to advancing ethical AI, mentoring aspiring tech leaders, and empowering others has earned you this well-deserved recognition. We are excited to see how you continue to shape the future of AI. Join our former PhD guest Annie Godelot for her upcoming masterclass, Carbs and Fiber, the Middle Life Game Changers, this March 27th at 1 p.m. ET, where she'll break down the science and give you practical, sustainable strategies to make carbs and fiber work for you, not against you. Don't miss this opportunity to learn. Now let's go back to our topic, beyond the noise, the hidden power of sound in marketing and business. This week's episode of PhD, we are diving into the fascinating world of audio branding and voiceover success with Jodi Krangle, a seasoned voice actor who has worked with major brands like Dell, BBVA, and Kraft. From lending her voice to global campaigns to hosting audio branding, the hidden gem of marketing, she knows firsthand how sound influences perception, emotion, and decision making. Join us as she shares invaluable lessons about the power of sound and bring these questions wherever in the world you are. And where in the world are you, Jodi, today?
Well, I am north of Toronto in Canada.
Beautiful location.
It
Canada, it
is.
must be. Hopefully it's already springtime
Oh
with you.
no. Oh
Not yet.
no.
Oh no.
No, we've had our fall spring already and it's now -2 Celsius here.
Oops.
So, yeah, no.
No sound of these birds tweeting.
No.
Oh,
Unfortunately, that's kind of what I look forward to though when spring starts. The sound of the birds is very comforting. I
it
find that
is.
super comforting. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We have a nightingale around our house, and this is the sound I was always missing. And I was able to capture some of the tweets, and it's just so calming, beautiful. But let's go back to the fact that you have not always been working with sound. Tell us about your career shift.
Well, I originally started working in SEO and internet marketing. So I'm kind of left and right brained in that I love technology almost as much as I love the creative aspects of working. And and creating. And I really loved the technology when the internet was a new thing. So I had a songwriting website from 1995 until about 2016. And while I was promoting that on a dime, because I had no money, I learned how SEO and internet marketing worked and then started putting that to good use for other people. So that was what I did for 12 years until I switched to voiceover.
That's quite a switch. So,
hmm
what inspired you to switch into voiceovers?
Well, I was doing volunteering of my time for the CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, back in 95 and 96. And I was reading magazine articles onto reel to reel tape at the time, which, I mean, that's going way back. But I enjoyed the tech as much as I enjoyed the performing of the voice. And it kind of got my brain percolating about what the possibilities could be. So I decided to look into that, but it was on the back burner for a little while until I really got tired of SEO. And then when I was super tired of that, I decided, okay, time to go into the more creative aspects of a career and let's do voiceover.
Well, you say creative, however, voiceovers does not really let you create your own story, right? You're mainly reading somebody else's script.
That's true, but what happens when you get a script is that you still need to perform it. So there is something, it is an acting job. It is a creative venture because this is a performance. So I needed to learn, first of all, how to act. I needed to know about how to use my instrument because I need to know what perspective I need to have when I'm performing a script. So someone gives me the text and they don't read it for me. They may give me some description about what they're hoping to get across and the emotions that they want to have people feel, but they aren't giving me a line by line read generally. Sometimes they may, but and that's fine. But it is up to interpretation. And sometimes my interpretation might be different from what they heard in their head, but will work for them as well, or even work better than what they were imagining. So it just depends on what it is I'm saying, where I'm supposed to be while I am speaking those words, and who I'm talking to. Because that's always your tone of voice is always different depending on where you are and who you're talking to.
You voice campaigns for giants like Dell and Kraft. What's the magic ingredient in a voice that makes brands unforgettable?
I think it's different for every brand. It just depends on what the brand's emotions are and what they're hoping to get across. So, if they want playful, if they want warm and empathetic, if they want more of a authoritative kind of sound, it really depends on what it is they're after, and a lot of it has to do with the emotion that they want people to feel. I think that's really the most important thing because their music, the voice they choose, any sound effects, all of that has to feed into what emotion they want people to feel because sound makes us feel.
Sound, well, the Netflix sound, often referred as Tadum, has become widely recognized by viewers since it was first introduced in 2015. This distinctive sound plays when users open the Netflix app and before the start of many Netflix series and movies, and they worked with Oscar-winning sound editor Lon Bender to create a unique sound to introduce Netflix series. How do you craft that kind of sonic identity?
Oh, that's a big question. And it's not something that I actually do myself. I speak to a lot of people who do it on my podcast. So I have I guess, a rudimentary idea. But a lot of them start with mood boards. And what they do with that is they get from the company what they want people who are experiencing their brand to feel and the archetypes sometimes of who they are. Like, are they a sage? Are they an architect? Are they a nurturer? Are they a mix of these things? And I'm really simplifying it here because there are different archetypes and lots of people have different interpretations of what those archetypes are. But in general, it's all about the emotion that you want people to feel because the visuals are the information, but the sound is the heart. That's how we feel, that's how we experience emotions. When you're watching a movie and you are being led kind of around by the nose to what you're supposed to feel in that moment in the movie, it's usually the sounds, it's usually the emotional voices and the music that plays that gets you to that emotional point. If you turn off the sound on a movie, you'll get the information, but you won't care about it. That's kind of the point.
So you also said that the sound influences how we feel, but also uh, it influences our emotions. And when we hear, for example, crispy noise, that makes us crave for food. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, I think also that there was a study done. I've had a fellow named Pavle Marinkovic on my podcast, and he did an experiment about chocolate, actually. And he found that people experienced more bitterness when they heard lower bass sounds of music, for instance. So, like cello and that kind of lower decibel stuff. And then when they heard piano music or flute music, they experienced more sweetness. So it our what we hear influences what we taste, definitely. And they use this in brick and mortar shopping malls and stores in a shopping mall or a brick and mortar store. If you're in there and they want you to linger, then there's a different type of music that they would use than one where they're expecting you to go in and out as soon as possible.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, it
Yeah.
just depends. It's the environment. The environment does influence a lot of how we behave.
Mm. This is something weird because, like, I hate eating at shopping malls
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not the ambient atmosphere of relaxing and feeling safe. So, you're a singer, a voice actor, and a podcast host. How does your musicality shape the way you approach voiceovers and audio branding?
Yeah, well, I understand the musical notes and the beats of a script, so it gives me a certain ability to understand how that script should flow, what the performance should feel like. So it also is about I mean, obviously, it's about interpreting the words that are coming from this company in order to get across the information and the emotion that they want the people listening to hear and to feel. But also it allows me to understand my instrument very well, so I know how to get into a certain vocal tone very easily, and I know what tone would be greatly appreciated in that kind of a delivery. Also, if the client gives me a piece of music that they're going to put behind my voiceover, that really gets me to the tone that they need almost instantly because that piece of music gives me the emotional intentionality behind the piece. And I know exactly where to go with my voice when it comes to that. And I think the music of my background, my ability to sing, I think that that helps a lot with that kind of thing.
So, when you feel not exactly in the mood, how do you change your mood to actually reflect what is the required mood for the voiceover?
That's a good question. I think that we have to be careful because we are human and our emotions come through in our voices. So I think just taking deep breaths, getting into your head a little more, understanding where you are when you're speaking that script, when you're performing it, and letting yourself linger in there a little more and cutting out everything outside of that. Just experiencing that moment in the moment. And it can be hard to do because it really depends. If you're in a different headspace, sometimes you just need to wait and approach it later. I would never say that as humans we shouldn't experience what we do as humans. Like, be human. You're allowed.
So, I'm wondering, Jody, do you have the same problem like many actors, visual actors? They experience this problem of stepping into a role and finding it difficult to step out when the role is finished. Do you experience something similar?
I think that if I was memorizing the scripts and performing them over and over again, that maybe I would. But in the realm that I'm in voiceover, no, I don't really have that problem. Also, I am mostly in the advertising, marketing, and branding space, so I don't tend to do animation or video games or audiobooks, and so I don't tend to linger overly long in certain headspaces. I get to know the headspaces that people hire me for on a regular basis, and it tends to be closer to who I am because people hire me because I'm me. They don't hire me because I'm someone else. So, yeah, I think that's less of a problem for me than it might be for some people.
So we have a comment from Desiree. Hello, ladies. You both look great. Love your voice, Jody. It's so soothing. Looking forward to this show. So speaking of your voice, Jody, some of our listeners probably noticed that I'm trying my best to um, set the good tone of voice to compete with your voice, as it were, which is impossible because I'm not really a voice actor. However, I wanted to ask you, well, did you always have this voice, or did you practice, or what's your secret?
There's no secret. I was born this way. My grandfather was a on the radio like years and years and years ago for a short time, and he had a really deep, chocolatey, lovely voice. And my mom is a singer, so this, I guess I come by it honestly, but yeah, it developed over time, and I think as I get older, it gets a little slight bit deeper. So yeah, it just happened. But I will say that voice acting isn't necessarily about having a pretty voice, and in some cases it can work against me because in the commercial market they want you to be very raw and real in a lot of cases, and my voice tends to sound a little announcery because that's just who I am. so so it can be hard to take that out and make it sound more casual. And in that case, really your voice isn't really about the voice, it's about what you do with it.
Here's a tidbit. Studies show songs with 120 beats per minute of rhythm increases dopamine. So, are we wired to respond to musicality in voices?
I'm sure we are. I think we are. um I guess it's different for everybody, and it might be different across cultures too, so I wouldn't say any generalities here. But I will say that in the early days of recording and announcing, for instance, on television and such, the microphones were not tuned for female voices at all. And they would sound shrill because they were tuned towards deeper male voices. So any higher female voice wasn't getting through properly in the microphone. And yeah, there's been a lot of developments over time that have made that much more pleasant sounding. But there's a certain bias that was created because of what we were hearing in the early days of recording and the early days of television and radio.
Well, we've heard about Elizabeth Holmes lowering her tone of voice to be taken more seriously. What would be your advice to those female who want to be taken seriously in the workplace, or with their pitching, or with their business idea, sales tactics?
Good question. And I think it depends on your environment. But I will say that a lot of women tend to upspeak, and you don't want to have a question on the end of everything that you say. So that could be a problem. But if you are calm and you say what you mean and you have maybe less filler words, that's probably going to make you come across as more intelligent. I mean, knowing what you're going to say and wanting to get that point across, I think, I hate to say that women should sound more like men, and I don't necessarily think that they should. So it just depends on the environment and what you're hoping to accomplish.
And what about the pausing in speaking?
I think it can work to your favor. People lean in when they hear a silence. And also, a sigh can really help you calm down. So if you're in a public speaking environment or you're in a public presentation or something like that, just, taking a breath and letting it out softly and continuing from there might be very helpful just to calm you down. And I think that's important. I think that we need to approach whatever it is we're doing from a rational viewpoint, from a calm viewpoint, so that we can understand everything that's happening around us. I think it's important for our voice not to run on when we're not paying attention. And other than that, it's different for every person, so it's really hard to say. But if you really need instruction in that kind of thing, there are coaches that can help with that.
Uh, Thank you. Well, we've been in this podcast 5 years now, and we've had over 170 episodes. And judging by the title and what our community is doing, how would you introduce our Women on IT community if you had to do a voiceover?
That's a big question because I don't write scripts, I speak them. So give me a script and I'm happy to read it for you.
Okay. Well, somebody from the production will send it in the private chat in a
Totally.
moment, and we will read it. We'll listen to your reading. I love that. So. You've called audio branding the hidden gem of marketing. Why do you think business still underestimate the power of sound?
I think because it's everywhere, because it's something that we just all automatically have in our lives and we don't think about it as something that we should cultivate, that we should pay more attention to, that we should actually make work for our businesses. And we are multidimensional people. We experience many different sensory things coming at us in a day. A lot of it is visual. And I think that if we negate the importance of sound in that deluge, that we ignore a really powerful piece of marketing that can cut through all the noise.
Mm. So, this is another fascinating question we have. Well, comment. We have a comment from Leanne. Nice seeing you both. Intriguing conversation. Thank you, Leanne. Lovely to see you. Hope Malta is treating you well. And we have a question from Olga Vassina. Fascinating show. Awesome voice, Jodi. Did you do much to achieve your perfect radio voice?
Honestly, no. This is just me. That's I don't know how to answer that exactly other than to say that I learned my instrument because of singing. So, speaking, I guess, is part of that and allows me to understand how I'm using my voice. And so maybe that gives me a bit of an advantage. But like I said, it's not all about the prettiness of your voice, it's about how you use it.
It's about how you use it, and you use it to the max because you also released your album. Tell us about that.
Well, in 2015, so it's been 10 years now, I released an album with a friend of mine in the UK. And it took that long. We've known each other since 1999, actually, because it took long enough. It took that long for MP3s and WAV files and all of that to be easily transmitted over the internet. And we never actually met in, I mean, we've met in person. So we have seen each other in person, but we never were actually able to be in the same studio together while we were making the album. So he did all the backing tracks, and I did the voices and like the singing and some of the backing tracks as well. And he basically did all of the backing tracks. He created everything. So it's amazing what he managed to pull off. And he mixed and mastered it and put the CD cover together. I actually paid a friend of mine in California to make the cover. And it was in 2015 actually put out on a CD. You don't see CDs much anymore.
Oh no, you don't.
Yeah.
And you still perform.
I do once a year. It's a live performance that I do with a jazz swing band called Play It with Moxie in Atlanta, Georgia. Once every January, we're the entertainment for a really small music convention, and I love performing with them. But it's the one time that I do it because I do have stage fright. So I'm more of a performer in a recording environment than I am in a live gigging situation.
Well, that's amazing because you may be yeah, an introvert. You call yourself an introvert, but still you do a lot of things online. You release your podcasts. So how do you combat that fear of speaking in public?
I think when I'm online, it's maybe a little easier. I just have decided to accept that when I'm online, I'm just going to be me and people like it or they don't. I mean, what else can you do, right? That's just how I have to be. And that's kind of how I have to be in my voiceovers. So, from that to being on podcasts and doing my own podcast, I've gotten more comfortable with that aspect of it. But I will say that just because I'm an introvert doesn't mean that I'm necessarily shy. So it's less about being shy and more about how I regain my energy when I'm done. So I'm like on now, but I will be off later.
Excellent. So you're on, and you're welcome to read in the private chat the
Sure.
intro. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring some fun trivia. The NBC chimes from 1929 were the first audio trademark, yet even today, only 4% of brands have a sonic logo. That's fascinating. And over to you. Let us hear how Jodi would introduce our podcast.
Okay. Welcome to PhD with Women on IT, Hack the Future. My name is Jodi Krangle, and today's PhD positivity hack delivered is by our host, Beta Young.
Thank you, bravo! That's a whole circle, Jodi, because I have to tell you that I'm also an introvert. I found it very difficult uh, to ask questions and be ready with various guests. 5 years in the making, and we are here. We've had over 170, well, over 200 guests during various shows, and it's lovely to hear a different voice introducing our show. So, as I mentioned, there is only 4% of brands that have a Sonic logo. Any reason why only 4% of the brands think about their Sonic marketing branding?
I think there are a lot of reasons, and one of them is that they think it might be too expensive for them to figure something out. I think it depends on what kind of sonic branding you're going to put together. It doesn't have to be expensive. If you just pay a musician to make a song for you that you can use in your podcast, playing your CEO onto stage for a speaking engagement, on a video, this kind of thing, it isn't necessarily hugely expensive, and believe me, the musician will thank you. So I think having your own sonic identity is a big umbrella, and you can add to it over time. You don't necessarily have to have it all in one go, but owning that is really important. I think the problem that a lot of brands get into is that they use license-free music directories to get the music for their videos or anything else. Maybe they're on hold, whatever. And they don't own those properties. They don't own that piece of music. So their brand cannot be associated with that music because another brand that may have nothing to do with their industry is using the same sound or the same piece of music. And it's really hard to actually become memorable for that sound when it's not yours. You don't want to piggyback on someone else's sound sonic logo or sound in general. You want to have your own. And a lot of it has to do with consistent repetition. So you need to use it once you have it. And that's another problem entirely. So, yeah.
Well, you transitioned from SEO to voice acting in 2007. What scared you the most about reinventing yourself?
That's a really good question. I think all of us struggle when we reinvent ourselves because we wonder if we're good enough. We always wonder if we're good enough. But one of the things that I've learned is that everything that I knew in the past, everything that came before in my career, informed what I became in the future. So anything. Like I was a secretary in a really tiny, small office in the early 90s when secretaries were still a thing. And I knew how to plan my day. I was on the computer a lot. I was typing a lot. Believe me, the typing has put me in good stead today. That's been really good. But you know, all of the things that I used in that job, and then went on to do internet marketing and design on the internet, and understanding that the world was a much bigger place. All of that came from being in that one position and then being able to explore on a computer while I was already done with my work. So it really informed everything else that came before it. I used to sell computer hardware for a little bit of time before that. So I understood the inner workings of a computer, and it didn't frighten me. And I knew that the internet was a big place and making a website was something I needed to do in order to get my voiceover business online and started. So all of these things were part of what allowed me to be able to do what I wanted to do. And I think that people forget, no matter what they did, you could have been serving fries at McDonald's, but you learned something from that experience. You learned how to relate with people. You learned how to use a cash register. You learned how to regulate what was going on around you and still get your work done. I mean, all of these things add up to what you are doing now. And I don't think you should discount anything that came before.
Well, Morgan Freeman didn't start narrating until his 50s. As a solopreneur, you've said outsourcing saved your life. What's your number one rule for knowing when to ask for help versus doing it all yourself?
Oh, such a good question. And I think a lot of people wait way too long. Part of it for me is, do I dread doing something? Is it something that I really am going to hate doing? I know I need to do it. And if I don't do it, it's a bottleneck in my whole system. And it keeps me from being able to do things beyond it. If that is the case, then I know I need to hire someone else to do it. Because I don't want to be held back by that one thing that I dread doing. And someone else is bound to be way better at it than I am. So that's when I will outsource.
So, do you mean like if somebody else is way better than you are, it still shouldn't stop you from pursuing your dream?
Well, it depends on what your dream is. If my dream was being an editor for a video podcast, then yeah, I would love that stuff and I would do it all day, every day. But if my dream is getting my message across and interviewing interesting people and then answering the social media aspect of that, then not wanting to edit that video or audio is holding me back from being able to do that. And I need to hire someone else to do that so that I can do what I'm really good at and what I like to do and let them do what they're really good at.
How did you learn to let go and trust others?
Oh, I don't know if you ever really learn that. I think it's thrust into your lap. Like I think you just have to figure it out. I am a little older now, and I think I have just gotten comfortable with not being good at everything. So I am a type A personality. I like to research. I don't like to go into things half-assed. I like to know what I'm doing when I do something. But if it makes the pit of my stomach feel awful that I am having to do this, then I know that I need to pass it on to someone else. And that's, I mean, that could be knowing myself, it could be laziness, it could be understanding how I work as a person. You know, when you get to a certain age, you start to understand how you work as a person. And when that's the case, you can't fight it.
Absolutely. Well, I have to admit that I had to check what D&D stands for. So, to those of our audience who doesn't know, let us know what is D&D player. How has role playing at the table translated to improv skills behind
Well,
the mic or business?
yeah. That's a good one. I play Dungeons and Dragons, so it is a role playing game that you usually play face to face. Although I've been doing a lot of it in remote sessions these days because of basically, I would never have wished COVID on the world, but the one thing that it did do was increase the rate of development when it came to virtual spaces. So, Zoom and Discord and all of these other ways that have made it possible for people to connect over long distances now makes it possible for me to play D&D with people across the world. So, I have a group of people that I play with that are actually in Belgium and the Virgin Islands, as well as I think Pennsylvania. And all of us at the same time. So it's pretty awesome. But what I love about role playing games is that they allow you to play a character and then think in their headspace. So it's kind of a lot of what I do in my day to day work because I have to put myself in the headspace of whoever is speaking what I'm saying on that script. And it allows me to really get into that headspace and understand it and put myself in that position and think, outside the box and on the fly.
So, what's the weirdest voiceover you did?
Oh, weirdest. That's, I don't know if I would say weirdest, but I did play a fairy queen in my very first and only animation.
Oh,
uh,
go on.
yeah.
Give us a taste.
Oh, no, no, no. It was basically just me with a little more legality, a little more regal. That's really all it was. So there wasn't much of a voice, honestly.
Uh-huh.
And again, I'm not an animation performer. That's not my wheelhouse. So it's not something that I do a whole lot. But I did the voice because I was a voice match for the first season in a animation special called Mia and Me. So it was the second season, Mia and Me 2. And I played Queen Mela, I think was her name, the mother of one of the main characters. There were three, I think. And it was it was a voice match, and it was really an interesting experience. And I got to match mouth flaps and do wild lines and understand how the various things worked and be directed in a studio, and it was fun, but not really my thing.
Fascinating conversation, says Patrick. Jan, how did you get into voice work, and indeed, how many hours a day do you tend to actually speak as you work?
Hmm, that's an interesting question. Well, how I got into it was I basically just hung up a shingle and tried to get as much coaching as I could, made all the classic mistakes, did a demo mill demo. So basically, a demo mill is a place that just basically takes your credit card. They'll take anyone's credit card, and then they give you scripts and they produce it for you, but they give you absolutely no coaching. So you basically sound like crap, and you paid them a lot of money. So that was my first mistake. And when I first started, it was 2007, 2008. So I was on a message board. It wasn't social media. We didn't have social media yet, not really. And I learned a lot from being on that message board. And it took a while. It took me probably about 2.5 years before I was actually making what I had been making as an SEO person in internet marketing. And then after that, the sky was the limit, which was fascinating to me.
So, what's your dream gig? What
My dream
voiceover?
gig?
Yes.
I would really love to work for the travel and tourism industry. So I've put that out into the universe a few times this year already. I would love to be the voice of an airline, the voice of a hotel chain, the voice of a boutique hotel, the voice of a location. I've done Visit Orlando in the past, that was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, actually. But I did it for several years. I've done Visit Alberta. Uh, there's all sorts of different areas that I could work in that area. I did a bunch of things for Devil's Thumb Ranch in Montana, and that was amazing. And I would love to do more of that. That would be my dream.
Is it a dream because it's a very optimistic or easy job, or is it a dream because you're going to be paid more?
It doesn't necessarily pay more, but it is one of those areas of an industry where you are painting a picture with your words very definitely. And your voice, the tone of your voice is inviting people in to experience this wonderful place or company, or to get you from point A to point B. And it's more than that. It's a feeling. You are experiencing this now, and it's going to be a wonderful experience. And I love that kind of voiceover. It's kind of like the anthem voiceovers, this is who we are and we're proud. Those
Mm,
kinds of things. And I love doing that.
excellent. Well, Olga Balsina talks about your intro that you did for Woman on Its silky smooth intro, I agree. And Patrick adds another comment. Maybe dumb question. Does a sonic identity require residual payments to the participants who record it?
It depends. For voiceover, yes, there are more payments depending on how often you're going to use it and for how long. So when it comes to voiceover, it is a licensing thing because it's a borrowing of the voice. It's not a outright purchase. So people are using my voice for a year in a television commercial and online, and there's a certain amount of payment that comes with that. And then if they want to use it for another year, they re-up. So that is in those cases a bit of a licensing fee. But when it comes to music, you can often get the music created for you, or the sonic identity, the sounds that come with that sonic identity created in one swoop, in one thing, and then that becomes yours. The idea behind that is that you want to own it because that way no one else can use it for their sonic branding. So it becomes your unique property. The reason that voiceover is a little more sticky when it comes to that is because I'm continuing to do my voiceovers. So if you are using my voice in a specific industry and you are paying for it for a year in that specific industry in a wide area, I can't work for anyone else in that industry for however long you are able to use that voice. And so that's basically money that I'm not earning because I can't work in that area. So that's why I'm being paid for that, because I can't work for someone else in that same industry as a courtesy to you, but there's also a conflict. I don't want to conflict with, I don't want to be the voice for someone else in the same industry as you, because that would take away from your branding, and I don't want to do that.
Your podcast uncovers how sound builds connection. What's a story where audio transformed a brand's relationship with its
I'm
people?
sorry, I'm not hearing you very well right now.
Okay, let me try that again. Can you hear me okay now?
Hmm.
Your podcast uncovers how sound builds connection. What's a story where audio transformed a brand's relationship with its audience?
Well, there have been several of them. I know that MasterCard, for instance, did a whole big audio branding campaign many years back, and they've had a much better relationship with their particular audience and for their brand because of the participation of the people who are experiencing it. So they made a brand sound and a song, a sonic logo and a mnemonic and a piece of music that was different for everywhere in the world that it was heard. So it was kind of the first localization that you heard in that space, or maybe the first one that you heard that was that promoted, that was that spoken about. And I thought it was really interesting because it did allow people experiencing the brand to understand that from their local perspective. And there have been a lot of instances of this. And, things like Tostitos, using the crunch of their chips and the crinkling of their bag and all of this stuff to make their audio logo and that kind of thing. When it becomes playful and when it becomes interesting, I think people pay more attention to it.
Mm. Babies recognize their mother's voice before birth. Sound is our first language. And I remember we talked about it before joining the show. I remember the best sound to wake us up in the morning was when my mother was singing. Whereas when my father was trying to wake us up, it would be just one knock at the door and saying, "Get up," and that's it. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the worst, worst sound to wake up to. How do you wake up to? What's the sound that wakes you up in the morning, Jodi?
Oh, honestly, in the morning, I don't honestly hear much sound. Um, right now, it's the humidifier.
But I mean, do you have a alarm set up?
I don't. I don't. I am lucky enough to be in a position where I'm working for myself, and so my body just automatically wakes up around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I just am up. So so then the first thing that ends up yeah, the first thing that I end up hearing is my husband, who wakes up before me most days, downstairs in the kitchen making his breakfast.
Excellent. That's
Yeah.
that's good sound of
It's a
I
very
have.
comforting sound to me. Yes.
Oh, my comforting sound is when my husband makes me a coffee.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Absolutely. If
Yeah.
you could leave the world with one piece of advice about harnessing sound's power, what would it be?
Just pay attention. I think a lot of people don't pay attention at all. And you need to be conscious of not only the good sounds, but the bad sounds, because if you hear bad sounds too often, it's not good for your health. So I think we need to surround ourselves with good sounds and pay attention to them because they do cut through the noise. There's a lot of noise out there right now, and we need something else to focus on.
Beautiful music to my ears, Jodi. I'm letting now carry on this conversation with our lovely Jamil, who's joining in the studio. Jamil, over to you.
Thank you, B. Hello, Jody. I hope
Hello.
you're enjoying the conversation.
I am.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about how powerful our voices are, especially in the context of audio branding with Jodi Krangle. What advice would you give to females to help their career or start an entrepreneurial journey?
That's a good question. But I think what I touched on before about using everything that came before is a good piece of advice. It really does contribute to all of the skills that you're going to need in the future. And also, I would say approach things from a perspective of abundance. And that means that there isn't a finite amount of something, that there's actually an infinite amount, and you are just having that one bit. and there's plenty for everybody. So if you come at it from that kind of a viewpoint, then you are much more likely to think about gratitude, to trust in the universe, to provide what you need, and just go and do what you need to do.
If you had to pick like the top three soft skills that super career driven women should have, what would they be? Especially in this world where everyone's trying to be head over all the noise.
Yeah. I would say communication is a really, really big skill to know and have. And then negotiation, because we all, if we have businesses, we have to negotiate. And then confidence, having confidence, learning confidence. And it is something that you need to learn.
Speaking of confidence, a lot of us get mixed up, like shy versus introvert, and
Hmm.
it's not the same thing. How do you move from feeling like your introversion is a disadvantage to feeling like it's a superpower? And how can you help others do the same?
I think as an introvert, it helps us focus. So when I am in a situation where I have to be public facing, I am very focused and I try to be calm. It doesn't always work, but I try to be calm. And yeah, I think as someone who knows when I need to be on and when I don't need to be, that I pay a lot of attention to the little things. And so when I focus on what I need to pay attention to myself in order to be my best version of myself and present the information that people are asking me to present, then I concentrate on that now, and then I know I'll have peace later on. I need to have a moment to recover before I go into something else. So I think a lot of introverts really just mistake the anxiety with the need to replenish. And it's not necessarily anxiety, it's more about knowing when you need to replenish.
Mhm. Nice. When you hit a wall, when you're staring down a big challenge, like how do I make this sound amazing? Or even just the everyday business headaches, what do you do? Like, what's your go-to way of figuring things out?
Oh, I think, well, for me, it's taking it one little step at a time. So I need to focus on one little bit forward and not focus on the whole big picture, because if I focus too much on the big picture, it feels impossible. And all I need to keep in mind for myself is if I take one step forward and I accomplish one thing in a day, that means that I am taking a step forward, that I am moving forward, that I am getting towards my goal. My goal isn't going to happen tomorrow. It may not happen the next day. It may not happen the next week or month or year. But if I continue taking steps forward, I will get closer to what that is. And I can't focus too much on such a broad goal. It needs to be a very specific, individual thing that I can approach one step at a time.
None of us are able to achieve success without some help along the way. Is there a particular person who you are grateful towards who helped get to where you are?
Well, when I first started, I told you I was on a message board, and on that
Mhm.
message board, when I publicly posted those really awful demos, I was kind of well, people basically told me that I had wasted my money in no uncertain terms. So there were a few people that were very loud about that. And one of them was a veteran actor from Chicago by the name of Lee Kane. And Lee, we had a private message discussion, and he helped me understand that this was actually acting. And he would send me scripts and I would send him an MP3 about, with me trying it, and he would give me instruction and send me back an option. And then, we'd back and forth so that I would learn more about what I was trying to do and the acting aspect of this. And he was a great teacher. And from there, we made a couple of spots that I could then put on a new demo to promote myself with. So if he hadn't have taken me under his wing like that, I probably would not have a career right now.
Well, with all those cool ideas about audio branding and how sound impacts us, it makes me wonder, are you working on any new projects right now?
Well, the project that I am constantly working on is my podcast, Audio Branding. So I am
Mhm.
always working on that and making new episodes. We just had an episode with Operation Smile Canada for Podcastathon, I think it's called, or Podthon. I can't remember. I can't remember which it is, but it's a initiative put together by a fellow in France who has brought together a whole bunch of people doing podcasts for a week based on charities and nonprofits and that kind of thing. And I think he had like many hundreds of people participating this year, and it was a tremendous success. And it was an honor to participate in it. And if people are interested, they can look it up for next year and participate. Yeah. So that was the latest on the podcast. But I've had some really interesting people on talking about audio branding and the importance of sound and how it influences us, and how AI has to do with that, what it's changing in the creative landscape, and what COVID did for audio branding, and how that changed over time, and how it helps our health, how it is a detriment to our health in some instances. The beeps in hospitals are not good for our health. I've talked to a whole bunch of different people from all walks of life about the power of sound and how it influences us, and I love every minute of it.
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water. In life, how are you in hot water? Jody, how are you brewing?
How am I brewing? That's an
Yes.
interesting question. Well, I mean, I guess I understand that this career owes me absolutely nothing. That I sometimes it's feast or famine, and I need to work on the marketing aspect of my career when it's quiet, and not get too much inside my own head. So wallowing in anxiety and worry is not a good place to be. So yeah, that's where I talk about the whole coming at this from a position of abundance as opposed to the opposite.
What is the number one book you can sit and think, oh, I wish I read before I started my career?
Well, I'm going to call out a friend. His name is Vincent Puglisi, and I was a member of his business mastermind many years back. He's a fantastic coach and a really interesting guy. And he has a book out called The Wealth of Connection. And I really wish that he had written this many years ago, because I should have read it many years ago. And it is really all about making connections with no reasons, no expectations, just meeting people, getting to know them, and understanding what they might need, and making good decisions as far as where they are in life and where you are in life and how you can help each other. And I think that if I had known about that, I would feel less icky about selling,
Mhm.
because if you have connections, if you speak to people on their level and you're already friends, it's not about selling, it's about helping each other figure things out, and maybe this is useful to them, and maybe they'll be interested in it. And it's less about being an icky salesperson.
Yes. Let's imagine that you could meet anyone in the world for a private breakfast. Who would it be and where would you choose to meet?
Well, I chose someone who is no longer living and thought that I would really love to meet Leonardo da Vinci because that guy was way before his time and I want to know where he got his ideas because those were pretty freaky for the time. So, yeah, I was really intrigued about his thought processes and where he was getting those ideas from and how he was going to make them manifest, and especially in the time that he was living in. And as far as a breakfast place is concerned, I love a good breakfast crepe. So I'm all about that. But really, anywhere where there's strong coffee, I'm good.
And for the last question, can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote?
Well, is it okay if I swear?
Yes, sure.
Okay, because this is a Mel Robbins quote that am particularly in love with, and it's "Don't talk shit, do shit." And for me, what that means is that I don't want to talk bad about someone. I just want to be in my own lane and figure out my own stuff because we all have our own stuff to figure out. And it's a no nonsense kind of idea that helps me remember to get down to business and quit worrying about what other people are doing. Just do what I'm doing and take those steps forward.
That's so nice. Jody, thank you so much. And seriously, you are so amazing to bring to bring us with even more audio goodness. I'm gonna hand things over to Beata Yang to take us
Thank you.
so much.
Great interaction with Jamil, and I just brought this great quotation. You mentioned selling. You can't sell anything if you can't tell anything, Beth Comstock said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what would Leonardo da Vinci sound. I hope he's got a good, nice, silky voice.
I don't know, but I'll bet his accent will be killer.
Absolutely. Well, you talked about communication, negotiation, and confidence as building stones for any female's career. The anxiety and the need to replenish is something that will definitely leave us with great thoughts, and progress over perfection is another great
Mm.
stepping stone. Small steps lead to big accomplishments, as Cindy Gallop always says. Jodi, thank you so much for sharing your insights and great, incredible voice. We are leaving here today feeling inspired, and in this beautiful tone of voice, we can feel at ease.
Thank you so
And
much for having me.
thank you. And that's it from episode 177 of Positivity Live, a Hack Delivered. Thanks to our guest, Jodi Krangle. To stay updated and ensure you never miss another episode, turn on notifications, hit that subscribe button, because next week we're gonna talk with Dr. Tina Shermer Sellers about breaking the silence, unmasking sexual shame, and reclaiming woman power. As always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little bit harder. And finally, as Maya Angelou says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, change your tone of voice. Today is your day to hack the future, hack the positivity you want. Thank you.